Morning students, today we are going to learn about Archimedes principle and principle of rotation. Archimedes principle. When an object is wholly or partially immersed in a liquid, it experiences a buoyant force or upthrust which is equal to the weight of the liquid displaced by it. So that means to say buoyant force or upthrust acting on an object is equal to the weight of liquid displaced by it. Applications of Archimedes principle. First, Archimedes principle is used in determining the relative density of a substance. Second, the hydrometers used for determining the density of liquids are based on Archimedes principle. Third, the lactometers used for determining the purity of milk are based on Archimedes principle. Fourth, Archimedes principle is used in designing ships and submarines. Next, why objects float or sink in a liquid? Iron nail sinks whereas cork floats in water. So when an object is placed in a liquid, two forces act on it. First, weight of the object acting downwards, which tends to pull down the object, and second, buoyant force or upthrust acting upwards, which tends to push up the object. Now, whether an object will float or sink in a liquid depend on the relative magnitude of these two forces acting in opposite directions. So, because of this concept, three cases arise. First, if buoyant force exerted by the liquid is less than the weight of the object, then the object will sink in the liquid. Second, if the buoyant force exerted by the liquid is equal to the weight of the object, then the object will float in the liquid where it is suspended. Third, if the buoyant force exerted by the liquid is more than the weight of the object, then the object will rise in the liquid and then float. The principle of flotation. A body floats in a liquid if the weight of the liquid displaced by the immersed portion of the body is equal to the weight of the body, or an object will float in a liquid if the weight of the object is equal to the weight of liquid displaced by it. Mathematically, weight of the object equals to weight of the liquid displaced by it. A floating body may be partially or wholly submerged in the liquid. The liquid is displaced by that portion of the body which is submerged under the liquid. Now, coming to the density of floating objects. How object will sink or float based on their densities. First, an object will float in a liquid if its density is less than that of the liquid. Second, an object will also float in a liquid if its density is equal to that of the liquid. Third, an object will sink in a liquid if its density is more than that of the liquid. You can understand this concept by the diagram given in front of you, that an iron block sinks in water, but the same iron block will float in mercury because iron is more denser than water, so it will sink into the water. But iron being less denser than mercury, so it will float in mercury. How does a boat float in water? So when a boat is gradually lowered into water, it displaces more and more water, due to which the upward buoyant force acting on it increases. More water displaced, weight of displaced water is getting higher, So is the buoyant force, according to Archimedes' principle. The boat stops sinking further down into the water when the buoyant force acting on it is just enough to support the weight of the boat. When the boat is floating, the weight of water displaced by the submerged part of the boat is equal to the weight of the boat. According to the principle of flotation, under this condition only the boat will float over the water. When more and more people get into the boat sinks more. Now, as long as the weight of the boat and the people together is equal to the weight of the water displaced by the boat, it floats. When no more water can be displaced by the boat, it sinks. Means, in every possible way, the boat will remain afloat only if the weight of water being displaced by it is equal to the weight it carries or the weight that it has. If the weight of water displaced by the boat is less than the weight of boat, then the boat will sink. Density. The density of a substance is defined as the mass of the substance per unit volume. Mathematically, density equals to mass of the substance upon volume of the substance, or D equals to m upon V, or in scientific notation density is denoted by rho. Density of a substance is one of its characteristic properties. SI unit of density is kilogram per meter cube and CGS unit of density is gram per centimeter cube. Density also decides whether any object will float or sink. Relative density. The relative density of a substance is the ratio of its density to that of water. So when we compare the density of any substance with that of the density of water, we get relative density. Relative density equals to density of substance upon density of water. The relative density of a substance is also defined as the ratio of the mass of any volume of the substance to the mass of an equal volume of water. Relative density of a substance expresses the heaviness of the substance in comparison to water. As the relative density is ratio of two similar quantities, it has no units. Because the unit of density of the substance is divided by the unit of density of water, both of them will cancel out. Thus, relative density has no unit. Here is the table of densities of some common substances. Their density in metric system and in CGS system is given, and also the relative density is given. So I hope my kids you understood what we learned today about the Archimedes principle of flotation, density and relative density. So based on that, here is your homework. Thank you. Have a nice day.